half in the bag.
The only thing is I was watching, I was like, if he shows up in the movie as a ghost at one point, and they have a touching... This trailer makes the tone feel more sappy than Ghostbusters has ever been. It's doing that wistful thing. If he shows up as a ghost to give his daughter some closure because they were estranged, which is the vibe I get from the trailer, that they didn't know Egon very well, if they do that, then I'm going to barf in my lap.
Well, guys, we're back in the void.
But what about the ongoing Mr. Plinkett storyline? Will you ever get the antibodies from Mr. Plinkett's blood?
Rich, this is a very special episode of Half in the Bag, where we are not playing our characters despite Jay wearing his VCR repair shirt for some reason.
That's very confusing.
Only you and I
don't know whether or not he's Jay or Jay.
He's Jay.
Oh, okay.
Only you and I wore appropriate shirts.
I know.
I'm just here for the booze.
I'm wearing this so I look like the empty shell of my former character.
It's appropriate also, Jay, that we're in the Black Void. Last time the three of us were here together was after watching Star Wars Episode 10, Rise of Skywalker's Lightsaber. And that's the last film that we saw in the theaters.
Yeah.
I'm very upset because, this is the first time I've had to see...
So let's talk about Ghostbusters Afterlife. That was a cue to fucking read the intro. You start talking about the movie. Can you be any dumber?
Ghostbusters Afterlife is the latest entry in our continuing collective pop culture equivalent of the Chris Farley Show.
You remember in Something Wild when Melanie Griffith had you handcuffed to the bed? Remember that? Yeah. Remember when you were with the Beatles?
Remember Chris Farley? Do you remember the Ghostbusters? You love Ghostbusters, but more importantly, you love the idea of loving Ghostbusters. Remember Twinkies? Remember the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man? Remember the Nestle's Crunch Bar that Bill Murray handed Harold Ramis in a throwaway improvised gag? Remember Who You Gonna Call? Remember Gozer? Remember the Fireman's Pole?
Hey, does this pole still work?
Remember the Terror Dogs? Remember the Terror Dog statues? Remember the Terror Dog's arms ripping through a chair? Remember Ivo Shandor? Remember the stacked books?
You're right, no human being would stack books like this.
Remember Spores, Mold, and Fungus? Remember Revelation 6:12?
I remember Revelation 7:12.
Remember looking at map exposition? Remember main characters in jail? Remember the eyeball ghost toy from the cartoon? Remember There Is No Dana, Only Zool? Remember literally the entire third act of the first movie? I love the 80s. Hey, remember cocaine? Cocaine was one of the key creative ingredients in putting together the original, an ingredient that is sadly missing from Ghostbusters Afterlife, resulting in a movie aimed exclusively at babies and adult babies that think I love Ghostbusters is a substitute for a real personality, because nostalgia is the new cocaine.
Everyone that has seen it says that they cry at the movie, so it should be an extremely successful comedy.
You know what? I've reached that final stage of grief, acceptance. I was thinking about that during this, and I'm just like, no. And I feel like talking about why the original was so good and why they keep screwing up sequels is just literally beating a dead horse. And this is a conversation we probably would have been really excited to have about 20 years ago. But now it's like literally a shell of something that only people over 40 remember, and it's now some kind of new, twisted, weird version of itself that isn't even worth wasting our breath on.
Well, the goal is to bring in the younger audience and introduce them to the world of Ghostbusters.
That's why we had 45 minutes of Remember This schmaltz at the end.
Yeah. At the end? That's the whole fucking movie.
No.
There are not characters in this movie. There are pawns. There are people, there are figures that are put in place to go from scene to scene to discover something from the original film.
There are literal pawns in this movie.
And there are literal pawns in the movie too. But there's, a scene of, she discovers the PKE meter. None of these characters have any personality outside of I mean, I guess the main girl, like, her performance is pretty good, given what she had to work with.
She was the best part of the movie.
Oh, yeah.
She's fine. Flynn Wolfhard has nothing to do. He has no arc. He's just like there because he was in Stranger Things. Mm-hmm. And when you do a thing with kids that's 80s nostalgia, well, you need the Stranger Things kids, right?
Yeah, there's a bit of marketing involved in it. He had a giant character arc, and that was to shoot the Ghostbusters gun at the electrical towers. At the end, he understood science.
That's what happened? I thought he just randomly decided to shoot the thing.
I think the Ghostbusters proton pack became like an all-purpose tool at the end.
Well, it's like, I mean, we've talked about lightsabers and the overuse of lightsabers. This is, I want to mention this before I forget. I know when The Force Awakens came out, we were relatively positive on it, and hindsight is 2020. And I think now that movie being as successful as it was is the worst thing that could have ever happened to Hollywood.
Yeah.
This is exactly The Force Awakens, down to the third act being the exact same fucking thing from the original movie.
Well, that's the thing is like, we didn't like the 2016 Ghostbusters. Not many people did.
Yeah.
And that was a carbon copy of the original, like beat for beat. All the 4 characters, they all get together, and it was basically the same movie. But it was like a very vague. It was as cynical as like the first one, where it's like kind of commenting on capitalism and consumerism.
The franchise rights alone will make us rich beyond our wildest dreams.
That one was like remaking the first one, just not funny. And then you have this one, and you're like, I don't know. I like any man-child, have thought about what would you do for Ghostbusters 3? As long as 30 years now, right? What would you do, And I was like, okay. And that kind of happened in the post-credit thing, right? Where you're like, what makes the first one funny, and we've discussed this to death, is that they're cynical, schlubby guys, right? And that's the funny bit.
Those characters and how they interact with each other.
It's a play on Exterminators.
$5,000? I had no idea it'd be so much. I won't pay it. Well, that's all right. We can just put it right back in there. Thank you. We certainly can, Dr. Venkman. No!
It's just a joke. It's a gag movie, right? And then the second one was not great.
The same movie again, just with a different villain.
It's your classic 80s sequel.
Yeah.
Same movie again, and then it's done, right? Then you say, what do you do when you come back for Ghostbusters 3? Do you bring them back? Are they too old now? Say if this was like late 90s, early 2000s. Are they too old? Is it funnier if they're older and they're more schlubby? Yes.
All right, suck in the guts, guys. We're the Ghostbusters.
I've always felt that, but I rescind that after seeing this movie because it just felt pathetic. Maybe that's partially the writing, and they're not in it that much, but...
The last half an hour of this movie was the most sad, pathetic thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
And manipulative, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
This movie is at its best when it goes away from the Ghostbusters 1 formula. It's best when you don't have just the needless references. The little girl discovering her grandfather and what he did, that's good stuff. I like that.
There's a couple parts, like when remember the fire pole? She goes down the fire pole and finds like his secret little lab.
It's a movie about Ghostbusters 30 years after the fact. Magical moment when you discover Ecto-1. That's fine. I'm fine with that.
No, the part that I agree with you on is when she's down there, though, and she's looking around, and it's like Egon's spirit is kind of guiding her, and there's like a light that kind of moves to point her to different directions in the room. It's like, okay, it's not funny. Ghostbusters is a comedy, but at least it's like something.
They're doing something different. I didn't care if this was a comedy or not. No, really. If this is just going to be a fun kid adventure movie, I'd be fine with that. Didn't need to be a laugh-a-minute riot. Didn't need to follow the formula of the first one at all.
No, it didn't need to follow the formula of the first one, but it at least needed to be engaging in some way. And that's the thing, is like all the characters fall flat, except the girl, I guess, the little girl, because she's trying to discover things about her grandfather. And it's like, I don't know, kind of works.
Well, that's the thing is, I agree. The first 75% of the movie, until there's a very clear shut-off point. My brain turned off. My interest just stopped, and that's the Walmart. When you cut to Walmart, and Paul Rudd goes into Walmart for no reason, which
to buy Baskin Robbins.
I don't think there's a Walmart that clean in the entire universe. Okay, with nobody in it, no disgusting weird.
That's the
people.
thing I want to mention about the whole movie.
Trash all
There's
over the
nobody
floor.
anywhere.
Yeah, you go to this, and clearly it's endorsed by Walmart. They have a cross promotion of some kind. I have no idea. And it's a clean-ass Walmart. which doesn't exist, since only in science fiction, that doesn't make your skin crawl walking through it, right? And it's perfect. And Paul Rudd is like, I'd like to buy products that are sold in Walmart. And then the mini Stay Puft Marshmallow Man characters come out of the bag, and it's like, that gear shift from it was like a indie drama. Remember when Ghostbusters 3 was a depressing indie drama?
That is directed by Jason Reitman, so.
Until it gear shifted into a schmaltzy nightmare. Mm-hmm. That's what it was. And then it felt like they test screened it. And they're like, okay, the scene where Paul Rudd is working on his seismograph in his home office, right? And then Gozer kidnaps him. They said that was too boring. So then Walmart came in the last minute and signed a deal. And so they scrapped that and reshot this scene.
Baby Yoda was popular. Hey, how about Baby Marshmallow Man? We could sell a ton of those.
It was dripping with cynicism, and it was just like gross. But leading up to that, I like Carrie Coon.
Hi.
I wish
lots of good actors in this.
I wish she drank more alcohol. I wish she was a more comical version of herself. I loved how she was so like gross and stupid, and she couldn't take care of her own children. And then when Paul Rudd asks her what her father did, she's like, I don't know, science, whatever. Yeah. He's like a physicist. Fuck, I don't care. Is there booze around? I love that. That was like that little cynical nugget that I wanted in everything.
What is her character doing, though? I mean, she's just kind of... my problem with that character, she's just there.
Like I said, she's a pawn to become...
She's a pawn to be... Yeah.
Because the third act is the third act of the first movie, where you have the Keymaster and the Gatekeeper.
She's not looking for a job to get her family out of the debt they're in.
She's scum.
She's not doing things like, I'm worried about my child, so I'm going to try and do this to better my child. She's just there.
Yeah.
Because she's Egon's daughter and she's sad.
Annie Potts tells her that the house is worthless and they're in debt, and she's just like, Yeah, they don't have that scene where she sits the kids down at the dining room table and says, Finn Wolfhard, you got to get a job at the burger joint to help pay, for the bills here. I'm going to dust off my associate's degree in typing, and I'm going to go try to be a secretary at the local law firm, right?
What if she discovered, in addition to getting this old house, she now owns the rights to the Ghostbusters brand, and she uses that to make money?
Yeah.
That would be fun.
See, that's like the core basic idea that I and probably a million other people have had about Ghostbusters 3, is that after Ghostbusters 2, where do you go? You do the same gag again? No, you franchise it, right?
Yeah.
And you have Bill Murray, Ernie Hudson, Ray Stantz, Dan Aykroyd, whatever his name is, and Harold Ramis, and they're like corporate guys. And they run, and Harold Ramis and Dan Aykroyd are in the basement of this like skyscraper, and they're doing like,
They have no understanding of the corporate world.
Yeah, and then it's Bill Murray on the phone, Hey, listen, our Cleveland chapter of the Ghostbusters is having problems with their equipment, blah, 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 can we get cheaper people to fix it? He's doing his Bill Murray thing, right? Mm-hmm. And then
he cuts the budget to save money, and that's when things go bad. The ghost equipment breaks down and goes
something happens that then in the third fictional third Ghostbusters movie, something happens that bankrupts all the chapters, and everybody quits, or maybe they try to unionize. You do something really like grossly cynical, and then Bill Murray fires them all. And he fired all the Ghostbusters from. And that's when the doom threat comes in, after the Ghostbusters try to unionize. And Bill Murray doesn't want to pay him. I fired them all. You fired all of them?
See, these are all things that are in the kind of spirit of the original movie, which is why I don't understand people talking about this movie, even like the filmmakers were like, this is made for the fans. This is for people that want to go. Like, this is so far removed tonally from anything Ghostbusters.
Jason Reitman wrote a great script, so full of heart, and going right back to the first two movies and its DNA and its heart and soul, and we just read it and thought, this is the right time, and this is the right way to do it.
If there's a steady paycheck in it, I'll believe anything you say.
Had you done Ghostbusters 3 in 1992 or 1994 or something like that,
yeah,
you age them up, flash forward another 5 years, then you could do Ghostbusters 3 in the same spirit of Ghostbusters 1. It is 38 years later. So you have to do the grandchildren of the Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
And you have to do what?
Which would be,
Who knows?
I would
You
be
shouldn't.
less bothered by this movie if it wasn't just doing the exact same villain plot from the first movie. Like small town, like it just like how hard is it to just create a new villain? Like,
I know.
Even
Because
the
then you
second
can't
movie
have
has,
the references to the terror dogs.
Oh God!
And Gozer can't show up at the end.
That's the thing is like Ghostbusters 2016.
She can't ask Ray if he's a god again.
Remember that?
Remember that?
Are you a god?
No.
The 2016 movie is like character-wise, like the main Ghostbusters characters, beat for beat the first movie, but with a different villain. And this movie is kind of its own story, but then the third act is the villain. So you've picked everything clean from that first movie. There is nothing else to like chew off that bone.
Where the heck was Slimer?
Well, now we got Muncher. That's how they varied it up. That's the only, because nothing in this movie there's not an original bone in this movie. Instead of Slimer, we have Muncher, but we got Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, we got Gozer. Like even like the second movie, like isn't very good, but at least it's got different creatures in it.
I love the first act of the second movie, just because when you see all the different places they ended up, and they're all very character appropriate. Yeah.
Let's see what happens when we take away the puppy.
Well, that's the fun stuff in the second one, and what really pinpoints what works about Ghostbusters is those specific characters. And now you can't do that anymore. So you introduce Stranger Things, and then you just repeat the first movie's formula again.
Yeah, and then you have the tease at spoilers. Post credits, Ernie Hudson taking on the mantle of the grandfather. He's going to finance everything. He's going to dust off the old. He still kept the old firehouse, even though they said it got turned into a Starbucks.
Because that was a joke that Dan Aykroyd came up with, and they left it in, even though it didn't match with the post-credit thing.
That's weird.
That horrible Dan Aykroyd exposition scene. Because
a complete stranger calls him up, and he just dumps all this, has no idea who she is.
You know Dan Aykroyd's lost it when he can't deliver exposition anymore. Can I say that was the worst part of the movie?
The original Ghostbusters?
Original Ghostbusters show up. They did not need to be in this.
I would have been fine with just that one race scene. Like, it needed to be kind of worked on a little bit so it made sense, because he's just dumping all this exposition. But if that was it,
can I tell you?
You're making a movie about the next generation, about the kids. Don't have the old Ghostbusters show up at the end. To steal the spotlight and be awkward
and
out of
confuse
place.
kids in the audience that haven't seen Ghostbusters.
Don't do that.
Which is who this movie is aimed at.
You know, my dad says you guys are full of crap.
Can I tell you my thought process while the movie was happening live? I was like, Annie Potts in the beginning. Oh, cute. She had a wonderful line that there were two moments in this movie that I thought were self-referential, which is why I liked the first 80% of it. Annie Potts says, Carrie Coon asks her if the house is worth anything, and she goes, no, it's worth absolutely nothing unless you're considering the sentimental value. Then in the car, they're on their way to school, and I think it's Finn Wolfhard or the mom who says, okay, let's get the jokes over with. And then she goes and she does the joke. I forget the joke.
She does all
the Adam jokes.
Yes.
She does science jokes. That's a reoccurring thing throughout the movie.
Right. And so that was sort of like, where are the jokes? Where are the jokes? There's a Ghostbusters movie. That was aimed at people like us who will say, well, why wasn't it a comedy?
I wasn't one of those people. I wanted this movie to be less of a comedy.
There was a couple little like cute moments and asides and little comments that I thought were like humorous, but nothing like we're trying too hard. That was the problem with this 2016 one.
Well, that's
trying way too hard. And this was like, oh, now they're barely trying. This is an indie drama. It's
not an indie drama. It's Stranger Things.
That's what this was until the end when it became
a fucking mess.
Just the end of Ghostbusters.
It was like a nostalgia bukkake. And it was like I was drowning. I couldn't breathe. And it was like no. But I'm like Annie Potts, right? That's cute. She just shows up. Oh, Egon is passed. Oh, and she's the conservator of his estate or whatever. Fine. The Ray Stantz cameo. Yes. Hello. This is Ray Stantz. And then at the end, I'm like, Bill Murray hasn't shown up. And then
I knew it was going to happen, and I did not want it to happen.
They said he went back to academia, right? And I'm like, okay.
That was a joke in and of itself.
Sure, but I was like, okay, at the end, you're going to have the little girl. She's so smart. She breezed through high school, and she's going into college early. And one of her classes, he's the professor, and he turns around. And I'm like, oh, that's going to be a great cameo for Bill Murray when it happens. And I'm like, they're not going to show up, are they?
Like in the jumpsuits?
Like how did they get new proton packs? Like, I thought Ray said Egon cleaned them out of all their tech.
Oh, they need to show up at the end for maximum nostalgia bukkake.
I know, I was like...
They need to stream their proton streams right in your face.
To be fair, I don't know if Ernie Hudson ever takes off his jumpsuit, like in real life, so that's fine. I assume that they got the backpacks out of the back of because they come kind of from the side of the Ecto-1.
Off
camera, they put them on. Why do they have
the old
jumpsuits?
jumpsuits they're like the Ghostbusters 2 jumpsuits when they wore like the darker colors
to
spray the slime around. Maybe they kept those.
Sure.
Anyway, it's so stupid.
What if they showed up in the 2016 jumpsuits? That would have confused everybody.
I mean, I guess I was happier that they were playing their actual characters as opposed to like weird people in the reboot. It's just distracting.
They didn't need to show up.
No,
at all.
No, and then when they showed up, I was like, they can't save the day, because that would deflate all the hard work and effort and goodwill that has been fought for the entire time, making the little girl the scientist and them heroes, and they bust their first ghosts driving around the thing. And
that's the one scene that was kind of fun.
That was a really good scene, and they're working on figuring out the plot by studying his notes, and they go down to and I'm like, they can't just come up and show up, these 70-year-old men, and shoot their lasers at the monster and kill it. And then they go, thanks for saving us. No, they're going to fail. And then
there's a joke to be made there. Like if they played that up, like they finally show up, there's a big hero moment, and then they just get knocked over. Like they kind of do that, but it's not really played for laughs. It's played more for tension, which is weird.
For some reason, these directors just like to say, okay, now you guys are all down on the ground.
Yeah, because the movie wanted to wallow in nostalgia and tears and love and warm feelings, and it didn't want to poke fun at itself.
Yeah.
And that's the very nature of the Ghostbusters idea, is that it's like stupid.
You know, it's just occurred to me, we really haven't had a completely successful test of this equipment.
I blame myself.
So do I.
The whole thing is a joke.
It's self-deprecating, dumb, and no one knows what they're doing, and they accidentally save the universe by forming a stupid business because Bill Murray's greedy. It's a hilarious film. It's a beautiful lightning in a bottle kind of movie, and this is just like a disgusting shell of that idea.
Well, it's
marketed for nostalgia.
Yeah. Well, that's like I said in the opening. Like, it's not made for Ghostbusters fans. It's made for people that just love to celebrate the fact that they like Ghostbusters. It's like a celebration of the first movie in like a meta way.
I was only going to make this movie if we could get everybody back, and it was a thrill the day that they showed up on set again. To see the three guys standing next to each other, for my father, for me, for also all these young actors. I mean, it's like seeing the Beatles back together.
Remember when you were with the Beatles?
And then at the end, when, spoilers, we predicted this, that CGI Harold Ramis would show up, and he does.
Did he get Harold Ramis's permission for his likeness?
Well, that's a whole other conversation. I think we brought that up in the Halloween Kills video, but I think you might have cut it out. The kind of moral aspect of doing CGI versions of these dead actors is weird.
It's not moral. Like,
well,
I imagine somebody like taking a CGI version of me after I'm dead and like putting me in some kind of like commercial for
it's gross.
Something disgusting.
And I know it's like, and then they dedicate the movie at the end for Harold, and it's like, I know Ivan Reitman was friends with him, and Bill Murray kind of hated him up till like the very last days of his life, but like the whole ending of it felt so like manipulative and gross. How often they kept cutting to that CGI ghost of Harold Ramis.
They almost got it right too. Like you mentioned this, and I agree with you completely.
That's the heart of the movie.
If their movie's a tribute to Harold Ramis was a very smart man, and he made some very funny comedies.
We're not really violent people.
This is our first gun.
No, it isn't.
He wrote Animal House, which is the ultimate like anti-nostalgia movie. It takes place in the 60s, and it's about how horrible everything was.
I'm fine with doing something completely new with this and different from the original Ghostbusters. You can have the heart. The problem is just the execution and like the long shots of CGI Harold Ramis Way were not the way to do it.
Yeah, like we were talking about the little Phoebe holds up her gun, and you see his spirit help him like
you just
hold
see
steady.
the arm.
Yeah.
And that was enough. You get it.
I thought that's what they were going to do for a second, but then they just kept cutting to it.
And sucked all of the magic that the spirit of your grandfather had away just by shoving him in your face.
Yeah. The CGI was good.
Yeah, they've perfected stealing dead people's likenesses and using them against their will.
Yeah.
They've perfected that technology.
But Rich, they dedicated the movie to him, so that makes it all okay.
And now Harold Ramis could be a Ghostbuster forever.
What a horrible thought.
But he had to like say goodbye and hug everyone.
Every character.
Including his daughter, who he didn't like, or she didn't like him because he walked out on them. But he had a mission.
Because he couldn't ever call her or communicate with them.
Yeah.
That didn't make any sense.
Well, and then like the whole idea that, because at first it's like, is he a deadbeat dad? Like that's kind of shitty to do that character. Turns out, no, he was doing this all to help everybody and save them. But the opening scene of the movie is him failing to do that and dying. That's kind of horrible.
It's horrible, but...
That's what kicks off the plot,
Yeah,
Jay. It's
I
fine.
understand that, but it's still like when your entire movie is a tribute to Harold Ramis, and the opening scene is him failing in a non-comedic way.
He succeeds ultimately. He's there as a ghost.
I don't know,
Harold
whatever.
Ramis just roll his eyes at this movie.
That's what I'm saying. Like everything he wrote was so, like Caddyshack and Animal House. It was so against everything that's happening at the end of this movie, as far as the emotional stuff goes.
Do you think this movie was made for Harold? Or was it made for truckloads of money?
The franchise rights alone will make us rich beyond our wildest dreams.
I think it was made to right the course because they started a new production company, Ghost Corp, with the 2016 movie. Ghost Corp. And that movie was such a horrible flop that they immediately were like, we got to fix this.
It should be called Ghost Corpse.
Yeah.
I was surprised to see that logo. I thought that was shuttered and
I thought that was
buried.
No. Well, they got to justify having that company put together.
Yeah.
So it's like, that movie, we fucked up so bad, we have to immediately.
And you're screaming in the face of a fucking hurricane of capitalizing on nostalgia, marketing,
Mike,
money.
our generation will not let our toys go. Ever.
Innovation! Proton pack ready, trap set! And with my new Ghost Never, all systems are go.
We're going to insist that our grandchildren keep playing with our toys.
You have to like this because I liked it.
They can't have their own toys. You need to play with Star Wars and Ghostbusters.
Well, that's the thing is watching this movie, right? I was when they're driving around the Ecto-1, right? And I'm like, God damn, that's a cool idea. It's such a cool design and it's so iconic. And watching this and I'm like, what in this is iconic of its own?
Oh, nothing.
What nowadays is the new iconic movie thing? I don't know. It was more sad than anything. And you said Ghostbusters. This movie's made for Ghostbusters fans, right?
It's made for adults and little children that the adults try and drag to the movie because they liked it when they were kids.
Everyone that has seen it says that they cry at the movie, so it should be an extremely successful comedy.
That's the thing. It's like the proton packs, all these lightsabers. The fucking DeLorean. I'm thinking of all these like iconic like 80s tech that was always in service of a story and characters. And now it's like the opposite. The characters are in service of the tech.
Yeah.
And
the first time they turn on the proton pack in this, we get like 5 shots, extreme close-ups of it.
They never showed a close-up of the proton pack ever.
Going up. I'll take the next one.
I'll excuse some of that. I will excuse some of that with this movie because this is a movie about nostalgia. It's just how hard you go into it, and like you don't need the individual lines, like somebody to say who you gonna call.
Who you gonna call?
You don't need to go that far, but like the magical shots of Ecto 1 and I get that. I get that.
I think we talked about that when we talked about the trailer. It's like, that's not fan service. Like, that's the tech. Like, that's just what these movies are. It's more the like extreme close-ups of it, how magical everything is. They even do, I couldn't believe they did the Crunch Bar.
You've earned it.
She's looking through the old jumpsuits and pulls out the Crunch Bar, which was just a one-off gag at the very beginning of the first movie.
He left that Crunch Bar wrapper in there for 38 years, Jay.
Because it meant something to him? That was Bill Murray fucking around on the set.
Bill Murray introduced him to Crunch Bars, and he's always loved them since.
Oh, okay.
In fact, it could be what killed him. He had way too many. His diabetes and blood sugar went out of control. So that was just a recent Crunch Bar.
Okay.
So you're wrong.
The whole building is a huge superconductive antenna that was designed and built expressly for the purpose of pulling in and concentrating spiritual turbulence.
The misty-eyed, teary-eyed view of nostalgia doesn't work in the Ghostbusters universe because it's a flat, sarcastic comedy. There's no magic. There's literally no magic. And when they stumble on the premise that a crazy man in the 1930s or 20s named Ivo Shandor built a weird building as a lightning rod to open an interdimensional portal, they kind of stumble upon that. Yeah. And it just opens up and they don't know what the fuck to do. So they just go up there and confront it because they have to.
And what I always say is the fact that all the backstory and mythology is treated so seriously, it makes it even funnier when Bill Murray is just like fucking around.
Right.
Hey, where do these stairs go? They go up.
That's the contrast. That's the joke.
Yes.
And you can, I know you're more open to the idea of this movie being a completely different tone. I kind of agree. But if you didn't have so many nods to the original and you had a new villain, that would have done a lot to alleviate how awkward this movie is.
Rely less heavily on the callbacks. I actually do think the rose-tinted glasses nostalgia could have worked a lot better. I think the problem with this movie is that 3/4 of the main cast feel like placeholder characters that don't have very strong arcs.
Yeah. Well, that's the question. There were no Ghostbusters in this movie.
That's okay. We're doing something different. I'm fine with that.
The movie should have been called The Legacy of Egon Spengler.
Well, you know why they called it Ghostbusters.
There were no Ghostbusters. There literally were no Ghostbusters.
They bust those ghosts at the end by just shooting at it. That's their clever plan. The fact that they don't have a clever plan in the original movie is, again, a joke.
Go get her, Ray!
Do you remember? Oh, can I make the greatest visual analogy ever?
Oh.
Do you remember when in Christmas Vacation when Chevy Chase takes the beautiful turkey out of the oven and he cuts into it? That's this movie. Right?
Yes.
It's shiny, it's juicy looking, it has all your nostalgia, but once you open it, it just deflates. and shrivels up into nothing because there is, I guess it's
That's completely fitting too because that's a National Lampoon movie. Harold Ramis worked for National Lampoon. That was their whole thing.
Right.
That type of humor.
I guess the heart of the movie is the little girl.
It should have been the whole family, not just the little girl.
Sure, it kind of is, but the mother is such a despicable character. And the brother, like you said, he's Bill Murray, Finn Wolfhard.
He's nothing. He doesn't do anything.
He's the placeholder for that character in that he's trying to get the girl and he doesn't really care about what's happening.
He doesn't really have much to do.
Nobody
as
does.
Finn Wolfhard or whatever his character
He fixes the car? Why? Why?
Because someone has to.
Does he talk about wanting to be a mechanic? Does it symbolize something for his character? No, he just decides to do it because they need a working Ecto 1.
They have a shot of him fixing their car, changing the oil in it on the highway. So that established that. And the girl is an expert lockpick. She comes prepackaged, much like Ray.
I bypassed the compressor.
As a 12-year-old a prepackaged character who's instant genius, who has no learning to do whatsoever, other than
discovery, which is not the same as learning.
Right.
She discovers all the gear.
She already likes science.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, her. I guess I was like, oh, mom, she's gonna fix the fucking proton pack because she takes it apart. She's like, it's missing a fourth transistor or something. I'm like, this is dumb.
To be fair, the ghost of Egon is teaching.
And I'm
her.
like, okay, so Egon helps her. She, I don't know. How about Carrie Coon is a drunk, right? And her daughter, the granddaughter of Egon Spengler, is following in her mother's footsteps, and she goes out partying, she drinks, she has a little interest in science, but that genius is buried way deep down in there. Yeah. Her mother isn't cultivating it. And then throughout this whole adventure on the family farm, she starts learning things and discovers her talent to be a smart scientist at the end of the movie. Not instant kid genius from the beginning that has absolutely no growth at the end.
That's the weird thing, too, is they establish early on that she's like an outcast, she doesn't have friends, but then there's never any conflict with that in the movie. Like, no one ever picks on her, she immediately makes a friend with that podcast kid. So she's not really, like, they never really, there's no, like, human threats or human villains in the movie.
No.
Like, there's no conflict outside of the broader plot, which is the plot of the first movie.
Yeah, there's no, what's his face?
Peck, Walter
Peck.
Yes, it's true. This man has no dick.
Not that you need, like, a one-for-one of that character, but you need, like, human stakes in the movie,
the
too.
The sheriff kind of is a Walter Peck.
He's only in, like, one scene.
But he doesn't provide any, I mean, Walter Peck pulls the plug on the ghost prison in the first one.
Shut this off. Shut these all off.
The farm is all we have now, but we don't have enough money. They're going to foreclose on that, too. The evil businessman in town wants the land for whatever.
But then, like, okay, but what do you do? Rich, your idea of the mom discovering she has the royalty rights to the Ghostbusters franchise is perfect.
Yeah.
That was my idea.
That was Jay's idea, but I'm doing something with her.
You had a good idea.
I had a good idea, damn it.
Correction, Jay. Whoever the hell said that. She can't pay the rent, and then they have to move out, and they find this disgusting farmhouse, and then she's the mom's like sitting there with wine like at night and watching the videos, and she, maybe she's like pushing her kids to like be Ghostbusters, and they open up, they like buy the local like general store that's gone out of business, and then you can have like it be like this like terribly run family business, where she's like using her kids who are underage to like bust ghosts. She keeps getting in trouble with the cops, and you have it really like funny.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not even busting ghosts. He's just trying to merchandise like the logos and whatnot.
Okay.
Based on nostalgia.
Based on nostalgia.
You work that into the plot.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean the Ghostbusters hot beverage thermal mug and free balloons for the kids?
And they mentioned that, remember that the podcast kid says there are more dead bodies in this town than living people? Mm-hmm. I thought that was going to pay off later. I guess it did. There was a miner sitting at the cafe. Remember?
That looked just like the cab driver from the first movie. Yeah.
But how about like all the ghosts from all the dead miners come alive, and then Carrie Coon has to actually start. The business is no longer a front to sell merchandise to like man children who love the Ghostbusters.
Have a little
and then she's
aspect.
like, oh my gosh, how does this equipment work? And then her daughter has to start learning how to work it because maybe her daughter's like a meth addict or a drunk. Like her mother.
The 12-year-old daughter?
We age her up.
Do that with Flint Wolfhard.
Give him something to do.
So he has something to do.
Sure. I hate instant genius daughter. Her character was written fine. Her performance was fine. She had several like Egon-ish kind of like tics.
Yeah.
Which was great. But I hate insta genius kids. I'm rerouting the electricity in the building to give it more amplitude. No 12-year-old in the world knows how to do anything. They know how to yell, and they know how to watch videos on TikTok. They don't know how to do that shit. It's so terrible and unrealistic. Have her be 17. Finn Wolfhard could be 24, and he's like an ex-convict, and the daughter is like a drug addict and an alcoholic, and the mom is even worse. Make them the worst people ever.
Like they were literally making this movie for babies. That's the reason none of this would happen. They're making it for tiny children, which is why the kids are the age they are.
Egon Spangler's family is just pathetic white trash. with some charm, right? They're not like awful people, like criminals or whatever. They're just like really sad and skeezy and scheming.
That opening bit where Carrie Coon is cutting Finn Wolfhard's hair like over his food. That was weird because it wasn't really played for laughs, but I was like, this is disgusting.
No, but she was using a box cutter to cut his hair.
Was she?
Yes.
No, she had an electric razor because she cut him.
It looked like a box cutter.
I thought it was an electric razor.
I think it was an electric razor.
And I'm like, who doesn't have scissors? Even the poorest people have scissors.
You mentioned, I'm just want to go back a little bit, the army of undead miner ghosts. That probably would have been a lot more interesting for the final battle than just doing Gozer again.
Small town in Oklahoma gets overrun with the ghosts of miners that were exploited by, I want to say Ivo Shandor, but we'll cut that out.
You know what? Do it, Ivo Shandor. It's fine. He was a prick. And supernatural.
Well, how about the guy who started the town? He'll have a different name.
Sure.
Mr. Jones.
Sure.
I don't know. Who the fuck cares?
But we're not fighting Gozer and two terror dogs again.
Obsidian Jones, okay? Because that's a great name. Obsidian Jones, the villainous man who formed the town to mine for ore or gold, knew that there were 100 trapped miners down below in the mine and accidentally hit the dynamite and trapped them and killed them all. And they buried all the miners. 100th year anniversary of the mining accident, they all come back to life to find the descendants of Obsidian Jones, who are like the town pricks that live in the largest house in the town, control the town, right?
Hey, sure.
And they've been giving Carrie Coon and her stupid kids trouble starting their business because they're just assholes, and at the end they need their help to save them because all the dead miner ghosts are coming to storm their house like fucking townspeople with pitchforks.
It's a little social commentary.
Yes, and so now you need my business's help. Light them up, kids. Hey, what's the daughter's name?
Phoebe.
Hey, Phoebe. Yeah, Ma. Put down the flask and pick up the proton pack. While we're at it, we're cleaning out your Walmart.
Just to fucking destroy that fucking Walmart with proton streams.
I was hoping something like that would happen.
It broke their doors down.
Yeah, it broke through the door. That was kind of it.
Ghostbusters 3.
That's part of why the scene where they first get when they're chasing the not Slimer ghost around the town. Well, that scene's kind of fun because we haven't seen anything like that in a Ghostbusters movie. Mm-hmm.
Act 1 used in an action scene.
And also they barely know what they're doing, so they're just fucking destroying the town with the proton pack.
That's the
one fun scene in the movie.
That was the equivalent to the Plaza Hotel scene.
It's similar to but it's I don't know. I guess the only new idea in the movie is that it has a gunner's seat. That's pretty much it. But
I don't know why they would build that, but okay.
Yeah.
For all their post-Ghostbusters 2 adventures.
Well, that's the thing is, the movie kind of ignores Ghostbusters 2, except for Ray's Occult Books. The plot is so tied in with the threat from the first movie.
Yeah.
And they say, and there hasn't been a ghost sighting in 30 years. So it's like, ghosts really don't exist outside of Ivo Shandor and Gozer. It kind of limits what you can do with future sequels. That's why it should just be a separate villain, a new villain.
Yeah.
As opposed to making it so tied in with the first one and saying that ghosts have never existed anywhere outside of that event in New York City from 30 years ago.
They said the ghost sightings were going down. And that's the thing with the first one is that it was serendipitous that they started their business at the time they did. Because the only ghost they saw was the librarian ghost. And that was just like a straight up ghost.
Yeah.
When all the prophecy was coming true, that's when all the paranormal activity started happening. Had the Ghostbusters not started their business because of crackpot Egon and Ray's interest in the paranormal.
And Peter Venkman's greed.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week. No job is too big. No fee is too big.
And Peter Venkman just wanting to grift. The whole world would be enslaved by Gozer the Gozerian, right? That's the funny part.
Yeah.
That's what's funny. An interdimensional god is coming to Earth on a predetermined date, and the Ghostbusters just happen to form right before it happens.
We've been going about this all wrong. This Mr. Stay Puft is okay. He's a sailor. He's in New York. We get this guy laid, we won't have any trouble.
This is one of those movies, and I think that's just, I don't know, I think I've shifted from being like angry, like disappointed fanboy kind of like person. Even though
I'm well past that.
I've never been a fanboy. I like stuff, and you always get frustrated when they screw it up. You know, like making a new TV show about Captain Picard, and it's just it's so wrong. And what are all the external forces that make it? Like the Paul Rudd and the cutesy Marshmallow Men. Why do they look like that? Why are they there?
We gotta have a scene in Walmart. We need cutesy little characters.
Remember the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man?
Remember the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man?
Their logic in the movies, this is how they'll defend it in the movie. When the Gozer showed up to get Sigourney Weaver, its eerily ghostly magical presence caused weird things to happen in her apartment. It caused the eggs to burst out of their shells. So the fact that Gozer was in a Walmart, it caused the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man product on the shelf specifically.
Yeah.
That product for no reason at all to come alive.
I mean, that's fine that supernatural things were happening in the Walmart.
Ice cream could have come alive. And
it'd be like The Stuff. The movie The Stuff, sure.
Now, out of all the products in Walmart, those are the ones that came alive for no reason at all.
Well, and you think that company would be done after the events of the first movie. You change your mascot. You get rid of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
Your mascot stepped on 500 people.
Do you remember there used to be a pain reliever called AIDS?
I've tried fad diets, powders, pills. Still, my weight's been up and down like a yo-yo until the AIDS plan taught me how to take off weight and help keep it off.
Yes.
They changed that name.
Yeah. You have pain, muscle pain? Use AIDS.
AIDS may taste like a candy, but AIDS contains one of the most effective appetite suppressants you can buy.
I have one other issue I want to bring up because I would feel bad if I don't ever bring this up. You're the Ghostbusters, and the smart one of the group says there's a world-ending threat coming. Why don't you believe him?
Yeah, that was weird too.
You've been busting ghosts for years, and you already fought a god once.
Dan Aykroyd, at the end of the movie, he apologizes to him for not believing him.
Yeah, Dan Aykroyd of all people, Ray Stantz of all people would believe him.
Yeah.
And you'd think at some point, Egon would call up Ray and say, Ray, come out here and take a look at these ancient fucking ruins that I found.
He knows it's coming. He's prepared
Catch
for
a
it.
flight. I've been working on burying 700 ghost traps in my crops.
Yeah.
Also, come take a look at this monument to Gozer that I found under the ground. That's literally, you could see it with your eyes. It's not that I'm a crackpot. There's literal proof.
Look at the spirits coming up from the well. You can see them.
Yeah.
Look at the proof.
He could send them a picture. They don't even have to show up. He could just take pictures of the Gozer monuments and send that to them.
Well, and the spirits coming out of the pit. Because it happens, that's the explanation for the earthquakes in this town. Is that's the
TikTok.
TikTok.
Spangler's TikTok. He's just constantly filming event. I'm warning the world. It would have been better if Egon was like just writing on the walls, kind of crazy, and literally had nothing, you know. And
that might have been worse as far as the fate of that character. But
no, whatever.
You're just talking about in terms of the story.
In terms of an actual plot that makes sense.
Yeah.
And in the barn is he took the Ghostbusters car and there are 4 proton packs, a handful of traps. That's all they had. Mm-hmm. There's more proton packs everywhere in this movie for no reason. He has them hanging up. He's got 700 ghost traps. I guess he built them all, although he couldn't keep the power on. Mm-hmm. So Ray, I guess, had 700 ghost traps. They had like 2, right?
He probably built more.
That's what he was doing on the farm, building more.
I could see them realistically having like a dozen ghost traps.
And the reason for all the ghost traps is you can catch Gozer with a bunch of traps, as opposed to just capturing them in one trap.
He's a god, Jay.
Yeah, you need a whole bunch of power from all these different. You can't develop a new device.
Well, why does it have to be traps?
Because
you know traps. Yeah.
Egon should have.
We just keep going in circles with these discussions of Why did they do this? Oh, we know why they did this.
He should have built a new device that was like a gozer catching trap. That was just like as big as, a barn. And they had to dust it off. But
I kind of thought they were going to do that when they said, like, the house is a trap. I thought it was going to be, like, something bigger than
It's in the structure of the house or something.
Something a little more grand than burying 100 ghost traps in the dirt. It's
Yeah.
so weird. It's just so weird. I would have been just happy if the car was just sitting in there, just rotting with the proton packs in the back, and that's all Egon had. Egon has gone off. Egon has gone bye-bye, folks. And he's too smart for his own good, and he's living like a hoarder, and he's crazy. And then he gets justified at the end because you have to have our characters like accomplish something. Remember, our characters, they accomplish something. Egon is a crackpot. No one believes him. He's got 4 dusty proton packs that he stole, 2 traps in the Ghostbusters car in the barn covered in dust, and he's got a book in the basement. Maybe he was watching football games down there, and he's got a book that says ghosts on it, and he wrote all over the wall a bunch of numbers, and that's it. And he just sat there like rocking back and forth, eating chicken noodle soup in a bathrobe, and then he died.
And your characters have to figure out what he was doing as opposed to just reading exactly what he was doing.
I think we're focusing on the first 75% of this movie because that's where, and we're forgetting. I think our brains are making us forget everything past the Walmart. And it turned into a literal nightmare. We're sitting there, we're constructing the film from the beginning, going, how do we do this? How do you make this work better?
Yeah.
And for a while it was working okay until they just dumped all of the characters they had built up, threw them out the window, and turned it into like a Walmart commercial, and started dumping like melted marshmallow on your face and smashing. Like you said to me in the theater, you're like, because Zendaya's trapped in a monster, and so is Paul Rudd.
Mm-hmm. Just like the end of the first movie.
And they go up and they break open the head.
Finn Wolfhard immediately goes up to it and rips the head off the.
Because he knows they're in there.
Because in the first one they discover it, and here he just knows to break the head off this thing because the person is trapped inside.
The first one.
How did he know that?
He didn't. The movie knew that.
He watched the first
And
movie
the
on
audience
VHS.
knew that. Yeah.
Paul Rudd showed it to him in his class, where he showed Cujo in Child's Play.
Yeah.
He showed him the first Ghostbusters movie.
Sure.
Right, well, the only thing lurking inside here is my slowly dying soul.
What would you say is worse? This one or the 2016 Ghostbusters?
2016.
Well, yeah. They're both kind of pathetic and wrong in different ways. But this one, at least, like you watch it, and it kind of looks like a movie. Like the 2016 one is just so bad and so awkwardly assembled, like trying to cobble together all this improv. Like, this at least feels like a movie. And the scene where they're driving through the town shooting the proton pack is kind of fun.
This movie has parts I like. I look at this movie and I see things that could have worked, but just didn't.
Yeah.
I would say I 60 to 70% like this movie. I know it sounds like we've all been right. Yeah, I mean, it's not terrible. Until it is.
Well, I mean, the ending's terrible. But even up until then, like I said, there was really nothing to latch onto as far as the characters go.
It was hard to get into it. I was getting very bored because nothing was happening. It was
scene after scene of we're discovering something from the first movie.
It's a Spielberg, like people looking, and just very slow shots of them like panning around and looking, and everyone was looking, and it was really dull. The Paul Rudd classroom scenes were fine. It just I don't know. It just felt so like empty for so long, where there wasn't like a buildup.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel like we were building to anything. And the result of that is boredom. I don't feel like we're building towards anything.
Mike, you're supposed to be getting teary-eyed when we see the Ecto-1 again.
No.
That's the idea. That's what it was.
Teary-eyed?
You're supposed to get, I bet if you look up like reactions to this movie, people are saying, I got so emotional at the end. I cried when I saw the PKE meter. I can guarantee.
Yeah, oh sure.
That's the reaction.
I don't understand how people can think like that.
Go see Ghostbusters this weekend, kids, but bring lots of tissues with you. The last 30 minutes of Afterlife is what mainstream movie making is all about. Who you gonna call? Hashtag Ghostbusters Afterlife is legitimately one of the best sequels in recent years and the most emotional Ghostbusters film to date. I ugly cried watching the end of Ghostbusters Afterlife. Ghostbusters Afterlife is absolutely spectacular in every way. There were tears, Harold Ramis, heart. The sound of Ecto-1 sent shivers down my spine. Ghostbusters Afterlife is going to be the only thing on my mind for the entirety of this weekend. Just watched it, and yes, I completely cried for like the last half hour, barely calming down during the credits. Then I teared up at the post-credit scene. I just cried through most of hashtag Ghostbusters Afterlife. Hit me right in the feels. Ghostbusters Afterlife was the best tribute they could have given Harold Ramis and his character of Egon.
There's no emotional resonance from the first Ghostbusters movie whatsoever.
No, because that's not what that movie was.
It's almost like you're taken out of the movie. Like I could see getting emotional, like if there was like a Ghostbusters reunion, you know, with all the actors. They're talking about how much fun they had making the movie. That's what this feels like. It feels like you're outside of the movie, like looking in.
You're looking at this wrong. This isn't nostalgia for the first Ghostbusters movie. This is nostalgia for Ghostbusters merchandise.
Venkman, Stamps, and Spangler are here. So are these ghosts. They've got ectoplasm. We've been gooped.
Ecto-1, proton packs.
The eyeball ghost.
The eyeball ghost.
That makes a cameo, yeah.
It's a strange thing, very bizarre, this movie, on many levels, like psychological levels. Because it's barely a movie. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're talking about a broken eggshell on the ground. We're trying to turn it into an egg. Right? That's a clip from Ghostbusters 1, I guess. I don't know.
Sure.
But that's what we're talking about. There's a broken egg on the ground, and we're just talking at it, trying to make it into an egg again. It's something that will never happen.
I don't know. They won't let it die.
Yeah.
It's a franchise, I guess.
Well, they're trying to make it into a franchise. We'll see how successful this one is.
Yeah, they failed with the last one.
There'll be another failure in 5 years.
That's the thing, and like, especially after, and I think like for me, I'm so sick of Ghostbusters. Not even like the 2016 movie sucked, but whatever. To me, it was more like the discourse around it. Like what a fucking nightmare that was. That killed any interest I would ever have in anything Ghostbusters related. And that feels like, I'm not nostalgic for it, but that feels like a million years ago too. That type of discussion.
Uh-huh.
Like Eternals, that's not really sticking. People trying to use that type of stuff. Like that's the thing of the past now.
Eternals? Is that the new movie with Betty White?
Don't say that.
And William Shatner?
We've been saying Betty White jokes for years though. She is immortal.
I know. Her and Mel Brooks.
Uh-oh.
And Henry Kissinger. The Eternals. Old whites never die.